Howdy folks! Have you ever noticed that it's really rare for animated mainstream films to be aimed at adults? Well, this is something that director Ralph Bakshi realised. He observed that a majority of cartoon movies were aimed at just kids and families, so he decided to make some animated films aimed at his own age range. In the 70s he produced a series of exploitation animations. Films like Coonskin, Heavy Traffic, Hey Good Looking, and Fritz the Cat. The latter of which was the first ever animated film to be granted an X rating.
Bakshi's work broke the boundaries of Hollywood animation. He proved that you could have things like sex, violence, and profanity in an American feature-length cartoon.
You're probably thinking to yourself, hang on Jambareeqi, why are you talking about Ralph Bakshi? Well, in this episode we're going to look at one of Bakshi's films, Cool World.
Cool World is a fantasy feature film that combines live-action footage with hand-drawn and rotoscoped animation, which is the technique of drawing over live-action footage. It follows comic book artist Jack Deeps, who ends up being transported to the fictional dimension that he created, Cool World. Once in Cool World, Jack falls for his dreamy doodle, Holly Wood, and makes love to her, which turns her human. Jack and Holly venture back to Earth, only to corrupt the fabric of Cool World itself. It's up to a detective called Frank Harris to retrieve Holly in order to save Cool World. I really couldn't get invested in this film's story. The structure, pace, and choice of imagery made it hard for me to get engrossed in the narrative. Most of the time I couldn't even follow the story because I was having trouble understanding what on earth had happened in the previous scene. Most of the time, there's way too much going off on screen. I mean, sometimes the film tries to get across a scene focused on a conversation between two main characters. While this is happening, obnoxious cartoons randomly share the same screen. It's very confusing, makes the film look messy, and sends mixed signals about what the film wants you to direct your attention towards. It also sometimes unexpectedly cuts away to cartoons doing wacky things in the street, which is pointless and has nothing to do with the narrative. Sure, I get that Bakshi is trying to show how silly and crazy the Cool World citizens are, but the film is so on the nose about getting this across. Yes, cartoon characters are often meant to be insane or wacky, but not to this extent. This is just tormenting to witness. The film's biggest problem is that it's incapable of being reserved, smart, subtle, or well-paced. It's way too hyperactive. It introduces characters, ideas, and elements at great speed and doesn't give us time to take in the things presented on screen.
And don't get me started on the ending. Ugh, it's one of the worst endings that I've ever seen for a movie. I won't spoil it for you, but let's just say that it's clunky, clumsy, nonsensical, ridiculous, and just plain stupid. It's painfully confusing. This is what my face was like for the entire last few minutes of Cool World.
Despite all these problems though, I can't deny how cool Cool World actually looks. The cartoons may be annoying, but the buildings look bloody fantastic. They're so unique, warped, and strange. I've never seen background designs like this before. However, I will admit that they can get distracting at times. I mean, a background shouldn't be more interesting than the story. The story should always come first while the set serves as a suitable backdrop. There's not much I can say about Jack Deeps. Why? Well, because we barely get to know him. He jumps between Cool World and Earth so many times that we don't get to see him interact with his own environment enough. All we get to know about him is that he has the hots for his cartoon creation, that he spent time in jail for murder. That's about it. To be honest, I got the impression that he was a bit seedy and creepy. He's full of nerves and sexual frustration. He's a bit shady if you ask me. He's not exactly an appealing lead character. Holly Wood isn't that interesting, or even likeable. Sure, she has dreams of visiting Earth and a fascination with Vegas, but she doesn't have much of a personality. She's not exactly funny, quirky, smart, or charming. She comes across as a reckless, spoilt brat because she puts her dreams before everyone's safety. She also doesn't really do much except flirt, pout, whine, and dance seductively. There's not really much to her. Once she turns human, she gets really annoying, and even more childless because she acts like a giddy twerp the whole time. I could not abide her in her live-action form. My biggest problem with Hollywood is that I'm not sure if she's supposed to be a whimsical fantasy character or a psychopathic villainess. The film doesn't seem to know itself and can't make up its mind. I never knew if I was supposed to be charmed or scared by Holly. Then there's Frank Harris, a former soldier turned cool world detective. The film tries to get across that Frank is a tragic character, but I really couldn't sympathize with him. It's supposed to be harrowing that he's lost his mother in a road accident, but she's never mentioned again for the rest of the film. It's supposed to be sad that he can't make love to his girlfriend because it's illegal for doodles to have sex with humans, but their relationship is so paper thin and unconvincing. I just couldn't feel sorry for him because the film holds back potential drama for his character. Yes, I know there's a point to his mother's death. It opens his eyes to the vulnerability of mortality and explains why he wants to live in Cool World forever. However, the film doesn't really touch on his fear of death that much, plus it really bothered me that his mother is barely brought up again to help explore the character of Frank Harris. Sure, she pops up at a flashback, but that's not enough. Repeating imagery that's already been presented to the audience isn't exactly new material to work with. We already know about the road accident. I want to know how Frank feels about his mother's death now that time has passed. How does it affect the man he is today? Frank is so focused on stopping Hollywood from making love to Jack that little time is spared for Frank's character development. Most of the cartoon characters that inhabit Cool World are mean-spirited, scary, obnoxious, and annoying. They lack any charm or charismatic appeal. They're so harsh and irritating that I couldn't like any of them at all. The animation is very inconsistent. Sometimes it's pretty decent and showcases a little fluidity or personality, but most of the time it can look crummy, stiff, looped, and lazy, or it can be aggravatingly over the top. I know that Bakshi is trying to convey a variety of artistic styles for all these cartoon characters, but it just creates a distracting inconsistency, and makes no sense. You see, all these characters are supposed to be just Jack Deep's creations. I think that it would make more sense if they all had the same visual style, to reflect Jack's individual drawing technique. It's also very hard to believe that the animated characters are actually interacting with the live-action actors. I couldn't be convinced that a cartoon character was actually touching Brad Pitt or Gabriel Byrne, or even the sets themselves. Maybe it's the animation physics, cinematography, or the way the cartoons are imposed onto the live-action footage. Whatever the reason, it really doesn't look believable as a combination. I think that Who Framed Roger Rabbit did a far superior job of combining the animation with the live-action footage, because that film had a crisper and cleaner illusion. Seeing as this film is a mix of live action and animation, it uses both voice actors and live actors. The voice actors do a darn good job performing their wacky characters, but it's difficult to cherish their talent when the material is so terrible. It's a shame because the voice cast features such people as Maurice LaMarche, Charles Adler, and Candy Milo. It's a waste of gifted performers. Gabriel Byrne plays comic book artist Jack Deeves, and I think he's possibly the only decent live-action actor in the film. He manages to pull off all the appropriate emotions, and his delivery is convincing. But he does overperform now and again, so he's far from perfect. Kim Basinger plays Holly Wood, and she's bloody atrocious in this movie. She's tolerable as a voiceover, I guess, but once she steps into the live-action role of Hollywood, she chews the scenery and makes her character come across as painfully annoying. Sure, she's meant to be a cartoon character, but Hollywood is supposed to be this wacky or silly. There's a huge contrast between animated Holly and live-action Holly thanks to Basinger's performance. A very young Brad Pitt plays Frank Harris. I personally love Brad Pitt and think that he's a talented actor. But in this movie, oh man, he's appalling. He either overacts and hams up his delivery, or he sleeps through scenes with little to no conviction in his performance. The soundtrack for Cool World features songs by David Bowie, Moby, the Thompson Twins, plus many others. A lot of these songs are funky and cool, but some of them kind of date the movie because they sound so campy and tacky. There's also an original music score by jazz and electronic composer Mark Isham. Isham's score sometimes fails to adapt to the images on screen, like it'll sound tense or dramatic when a scene is reserved. But when the score relies on soft jazz to capture the urban atmosphere of Cool World, it really works. I mean, soft jazz is notable for its ability to adapt to detective movies.
To conclude, Cool World is actually considered to be one of the worst animated films of all time by many people. And if I'm going to be honest, I can see why. I found it to be obnoxious, annoying, boring, and incoherent. The sad thing is, Ralph Bakshi does have talent. I mean, I believe that he can make a good movie. But I'm going to have to give Cool World 1 chilly star out of 5. Now, after Bakshi finished Cool World, sometime later he went into retirement. Fortunately, he recently ran a Kickstarter project to fund a new movie. That's right, there's going to be a new Ralph Bakshi film. It's going to be called The Last Days of Coney Island. I'm really excited for it. Let's just hope that it's nothing like Cool World.